Jeeps like the Wrangler, the Grand Cherokee, Jeep Compass, Dodge Durangos, Hornets, as well as Challengers and Chargers, and Ram pickup trucks are all part of the Stellantis team, and they're seeing huge changes, enough to actually choke a horse, and it's questioned whether they're in for dire straits. Stellantis is talking about massive layoffs, and a major restructuring is in the works. Ram, Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge are all on the verge of going down. And what are the key signs? Well, desperation for one, when they're throwing numbers like $18,500 off in a market where people are starting to buy again. It begs the question, why such big incentives? More desperation comes in the way of mass layoffs. Yes, Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis, is literally promised that in the wake of trying to make space for the new electric vehicle marketplace, they promised to have 50% of the market capacity being pure electric by 2030. And 100% in Europe, and in doing so they're making major strike changes. Problem is, vehicles aren't selling. I mean, we have trucks upon trucks upon trucks, and as well we've got Jeeps, and more Jeeps. So many Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep products that they're just not selling. There's 22 model years, 23, 24, and as well even now 25s. No, inventory is climbing on the 25s, but it begs the question, what about the 23s and 24s? There's still a pile of inventory. How are they going to sell those? And if you care about your money, your mental well-being, as well as your family, and how we survive during this cost of living crisis, be sure to hit that subscribe button down there before we get started, and let's get going. We know Stellantis products are some of the poorest selling products that aren't moving all that quickly. I mean, we see all these Jeeps, Dodges, and Chrysler products here lined up, and most of those have been sitting there for 6 months to a year or even more. The average day's supply for some of these vehicles is up around 150 and plus days supply. And while some of the 23s are starting to dwindle down, that's only because heavy incentives have started to sort of knock those down. 22s, yes, there's still a few of those as well too, and now they're trying to heavily incentivize the 24s just to make them go away, to make space for the 25s, but they're not selling like hotcakes. The worst part is they're not learning from experience, and the Rams are some of the highest priced pickup trucks in the 1500 segment when you compare to GM as well as Ford. We also see vehicles like the Durango, way too expensive, the SRTs, almost $100,000, as well as those little hot rods, which are popular, but they're not built all that well. But all this desperation by Stellantis now, ever since this European company took over Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, it's not the company that it once was, unfortunately, and Lee Iacocca would literally roll in his grave when he realized what's about to happen at his Auburn Hills Tower, which that's the tower that was actually constructed and fully funded by the sales of their ever popular first generation Dodge Caravan, as well as the infamous K-Car. Nobody accused those being of quality vehicles, but at least they were sold on a song and a dance. Whereas these vehicles aren't much better quality, but now they're $80, $90, $100,000, so that's the difference. Lee had something figured out. Clearly, Stellantis is in a tough spot trying to sell champagne prices to people on a beer budget. Let's face it, Jeeps and Rams were all designed in mind for the layman, for the mid-class, blue-collar worker, the person that just need to get to A to B, do their construction work or their mid-level job or their, their 9-to-5 grinder. Those are the kind of vehicles they were initially targeted for. And now most of those people in those spaces don't have the kind of money to do that because the cost of living has gone up so drastically, because wages haven't followed suit with the price increases of a lot of these premium vehicles. That's right, premium? I never thought I would say that, but a Jeep Grand Cherokee like this is now considered upscale based on Stellantis's marketing strategies. These now are selling for a hot dollar. So Tavares is actually not just cutting heads, he's actually trying to fully transition this whole business model. And by doing so, you're looking at outsourcing a lot of engineering, outsourcing a lot of labor to other foreign globalized type markets where they believe that they can save a lot of labor costs. They're trying to make up $200 million on the backs and the hides of somebody, and unfortunately it's the permanent workers that are going bye-bye. And on top of this, they suggest that they're going to find ways to save money in the supply chain. What is that, putting only 3 bolts out of the 4 into the hinge? Or possibly not using a gasket between the head and the block? I don't know what it is, just kidding. But at the end of the day, they're taking drastic measures to try to cut costs, eliminate headcount, save costs on parts, as well as reduce some of the real estate like Auburn Hills Tower, which apparently might be sold. So I fully understand stock prices, it's all about trying to maximize the stock prices for the shareholders to give them the top dividends and to show proper growth in the organization. But there becomes a time when you've literally choked it out and there's nothing left. I've got a great option. I've got some great solutions, and I don't need a $32 million salary to tell you what some of those great solutions are to actually sell a lot of these vehicles, so you're not worried about strategizing, firing half your operating workforce in North America, Canada, as well as United States. I've got some great strategies, but it doesn't include taking a base truck like this 3500D Tradesman, which this one is because it has all the basic plastic on it and it doesn't have sunroof or flat fabric seats, but it's a Tradesman Crew 4x4 and charging $88,000 plus extras. You're now at about $100,000 out the door by the time you buy this Tradesman. That's a base 4x4 1-ton diesel. It also doesn't include taking a base Jeep like this that's entry level because it's a 4-door Sport S 4x4 and charging $66,000 for it. That's not going to get it done. Nor is charging what they want for this little Durango SRT, and they actually are looking for a total price on the 392 SRT of $105,000. See, just like during Lee Iacocca's reign of terror or fun and frivolity, if you will, a lot of people just are looking for something a little more affordable and they can't afford these. What you've got right here, it's pretty simple. It's basic math. They should do a basic cost versus income analysis and study what the general demographic is able to afford. And they'll find most people that are attracted to these vehicles are the very people that can't afford them. They're literally targeting the wrong people for sales of these vehicles. And while I personally drive an 03 Ram, I like the truck, it's great. But really, when most people get down to it, the most popular trucks have always been Ford and GM. You always trade shots. Go to a little town in the middle of butt hell nowhere and you'll find the majority of the dealerships at one lone dealer that's parked in the middle of that little town of 225 people. You'll find there's almost always a GM dealer or a Chevy dealer, sometimes a Ford dealer. Rarely are you finding Rams. You got to step up to towns that are at least, 15, 20,000, at least from my personal observation and my logistics. Now, this is what I'm starting to see. So when people think of some of the quality domestic of the big three, they usually go GM, Ford, and then of course products like the Ram, Dodge, Chrysler are usually last. And it should be based on price point, but now even the price points out to lunch. Rubicon 4xe, right here for another example. We have it $85,000 all the way up from $73,000. How do you add 15-20% more in options on the base vehicle? It doesn't make sense. I mean, if you want to tack on an extra couple grand because you upsize the wheels a little bit, give a couple features, maybe power windows and heated seats, that's great. But you package it up. And I get the business model of trying to make money. That's what these businesses are in for. They're a money-making proposition. But for those people that are shopping for those vehicles, they can't justify all of that extra cost. If you sell that vehicle, that Jeep Wrangler loaded up hybrid vehicle like the 4xe, then most people would probably be okay in spending $30,000, $35,000, but certainly not $85,000. That's a lot to bite off. And here we have one of their smallest offerings currently, other than the Renegade, which is supposedly coming out electrified. Here's the little Compass. This is one of their models, and apparently they're not updating it. It was supposed to get through a major refresh, but this is their smallest offering, other than, like I said, the Renegade, which is really more of a Fiat. But here we have this little Compass right here, all dressed in nice white and black trim on top, one-touch accent in. This is a Compass Altitude 4x4. It's a 24 model year, so clearly they're going to be incentivizing this little unit to go away. But how much is this? Look at that. $48,710. $48,710 right there. So how do you justify 49 grand plus extras and taxes? You're 55,000+ out the door for this unit. Most people I've spoke to said they'd much rather, for that kind of money, get into a Honda CR-V, a Toyota RAV4, get into something that's a little more tried and true and certainly more reliable. I'm not sure the quality is up to the same as some of their competition. So people always see brands like this as a little bit more value add. And if the value's there, they don't mind putting in the investment into that vehicle. But if the quality's not there and the price is high, then there's really no place for it. And these little guys here too are shopping. I'm not so sure they're liking what they're seeing. Yeah, see, they're taking off too. See, and there's a piece of the Ram quality too. We've got some rust bubbles forming under this little door handle. And many Rams, after about 5, 6, or 7 years old, they start to rust out. And nobody loves the looks of that. When they rust out in this area, they rust out along the bottom edge of the doors, as well as the rocker panel winds up with rust too. And sometimes you get a little rust along this area. That's the other part of the problem. If they're gonna spend $80,000 or $90,000 or $100,000 on a vehicle, and they know for a fact, because they've seen them on the road rust out after a few short years, then it feels like a wasted investment. And that's where people are struggling. The quality and the price have to follow suit, but it doesn't always seem to do that, and people are just getting done with it. So according to Tavares, he has some big lofty aspirations to bring out many new models. They want to go up from 10 badges to 13 badges. They want to come out with many different drivetrains, V8s, V6s, Turbo 4s, hybrids, electrics, EVs. They want to expand on their lineup. But see, that's the very problem. Now, diversity is great. I love diversity and I love all kinds of options. But if you want to keep it simple and you want to keep costs down, let's face it, a $90,000 truck shouldn't cost any more than 50 grand. I'm being totally frank. And that's what most buyers are expecting. That's why they're not selling. That's why they're selling much poorer than the others. And a lot of that is aligned with the quality. So either one of two things changes. The quality goes way up and then they maintain prices, or they maintain the quality as it's been for so many years, and then they start to phase the prices down a little bit, make it more reachable for your average consumer. And I don't mean like a 3-year-old new on the lot, new old stock. I mean a brand new 2025 right now should be a fully loaded, no more half ton, should be no more than about $50,000 for a wide open, fully loaded vehicle. Like the Tungsten, for example, should be nowhere near 100 grand. And I'm not here to say how a business should run, but I am here to say a lot of times we see it in government. There's too much fat and filth and flarm in the middle, and those are usually the places you've got to start cleaning house. The people, the redundancies, make them go away. Of course, outsourcing sometimes works, centralizing sometimes works. Get your supply chain in order. Definitely find those efficiencies, but don't hatchet everybody, and half the time it's frontline or people that are mandatory to actual proper operation of these businesses, which seems to be the very people that are going to take the biggest hit this next go around. We know this problem isn't unique to Stellantis, and we see Ford struggling as well with their ICE as well, their Blue Oval, which is their standard garden variety ICE vehicles, as well as their fleet vehicles being the sole breadwinner, while their electric vehicle market saps the lifeblood out of the organization. They're just lucky that they're able to lean on their internal combustion drivetrains. Same story goes with GM. GM's got a very lofty goal, but it's that transition into electrification that is sapping what they've got currently in their ICE. And that's why people are paying so much for a lot of these internal combustion engines, is simply because we're paying for this transition period. We're paying for this move to buying electric vehicles. We're paying for all of that transition because it costs a lot for this research and development. But at the same token, these manufacturers need to find ways to trim it down, sell some of their new old stock for closer to maybe invoice right off the bat, enough beating around the bush, and just say, here it is, straight up, this is the option. I mean, they just ultimately need to cut costs, and that's going to move a lot of these vehicles and all this inventory down the road. And then, you know, I got another note here. There's just looking down here that I've got somebody by the name of Dawn. It looks like they're a school teacher that actually had some problems. Their vehicle her vehicle wore out. She's a single mom of 2 kids, a school teacher, not making a ton of money, and her car finally crapped out. She went and shopping for one of these new Compasses thinking, hey, this is a cheap vehicle, I should be able to get into it and at least get a new vehicle. She was not able to afford that. So what I did was I reached back and I said, look, I've got a great solution. There's some great options out there. They're not high end, they're not luxurious, but I gave her a list, and definitely I want to share that list with her, and I'm going to share that list with you right there. So check out some of this list of vehicles that might be affordable with some of the best incentives, because that's exactly where I pointed her. Hope to see each and every one on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.